the first running back off the board. They broke the seal on the running backs. Panthers draft grade. This is the entirety of it. It's not just Xavier Legette. It's not just Jonathan Brooks. It's all of them. I'm going B-.
Okay.
B-. You're passing comfortably, right?
Yeah.
If anyone asks, what do you say? B? Yeah, B. But what is it really? Darn near a C. You're close, right? It's a B-. And part of it was there is an element of they were trying to get back to neutral this year. This new group. It was actually funny. I saw Panthers fans complaining that the Ringer, which is Bill Simmons' site, their website, they cover a whole bunch of sports and pop culture. They gave out draft reviews for each team. And I saw Panthers fans were mad on social media that the first couple of sentences about this year's Panthers review was about last year's Bryce Young trade. And my thought was, well, you can't tell the story of this year's draft without explaining why they didn't have the number 1 overall pick, without explaining why they were not going to have their full complement of picks, and they had to make up for that. So there was an element of, they started behind the 8 ball. They started with everyone else having a head start on them because of a trade that the previous regime made last year. So I don't even know, if an A+ was a possibility for them.
Oh, God, no.
They could have got value, that I see or that the experts see at every pick, and I'd still be going like, A-. Like, just because they started off trailing. Now, I have favorite picks. I have shoulda, woulda, couldas. I have a whole bunch of observations here. But part of the story is Bryce Young was a part of this draft class. Right? And guess what? Part of the Bears draft class was Keenan Allen because they traded their 4th-round pick for Keenan Allen, right? Those things all happen. It's all part of the total value. So if you spent part of this year's total value on Bryce Young last year, a third of Bryce Young is part of this year's draft class. Let's hear from Dave Canales on bringing talent in offensively, which is definitely what the first half of the draft was for the Carolina Panthers.
Absolutely. I feel like we really took advantage of some of those spots to, bring a bunch of talent, into our roster, specifically talking about the offense, just looking positionally, with a running back, a receiver, and a tight end, skill-wise, just really bringing a little bit of juice there to really challenge that whole group and elevate the offense. So I'm really excited about what we did there.
Here's why I like the first 3 offensive picks of the Dave Canales and Dan Morgan era. They knew what they wanted. And they didn't care if it's what I wanted or if it's what Mel Kiper thought they wanted or if it was what Todd McShay or some other team thought they wanted. They knew what they wanted, and they were not going to be moved off of that stance. Right? They wanted Jonathan Brooks. They traded up to get a running back, which is not usually the position you see teams start with when they're doing a rebuild. And he's coming off an ACL injury, which is not usually what players are hoping to do going into their NFL draft prospect season. So he wasn't able to do a lot of the pre-draft stuff. But he's the player that Dave Canales and Dan Morgan wanted, and they went to get him. Same thing with Legette, the last pick of the first round, trading up to go get him. It wasn't, well, there's this group of McConkey and Coleman and Legette, and we're going to take whichever one falls to us. There's one we want. Let's go get him. It wasn't, everybody had Cooper DeJean mocked as a mid-first rounder. We can get him at pick 39. It was, no, we're trading back from pick 39. That's what we want to do. The tough decisions. Who would have expected Troy Franklin, wide receiver out of Oregon, to be available with the first pick in the 4th round? Nobody. But the Panthers didn't pivot and go, we do need receivers. They said, no. Jatavion Sanders. That's our guy. Texas, tight end. I don't care if it's not what the mock drafts say or if we could get a steal in value by bringing in Troy Franklin. It was about what they thought. Now, here's why I go B- rather than A. I do think part of the draft is paying attention to what everybody else wants. It's not just about what you want. Because if you want something that everybody else doesn't want, you can move back. You can get value for it, right? If you want something, but you know the next 5 people in the draft don't want it, see if you can find value there, right? Half the draft is knowing your board. The other half is doing your darndest to pay attention to what you think every other team needs. I do think the Panthers got a little bit too bogged down into this is about us, right?
No, they had their plan. They stuck with it.
It's what coaches say, right? It's about us. It's not about them. But their quarterback has a strong arm and he likes throwing rolling left, so pay attention to that. I'm going, wait a second. Is it about us or is it about we need to know their scouting report, but it's about us? That's kind of how I look at a draft. It's we got to know what we want, what we value, but we should also pay attention to what everybody else wants and what everybody else values. I think they could have gotten Brooks a little bit later. I think they could have gotten a few guys that they drafted a little bit later, maybe even the next round. Now, maybe they didn't want to play that bit of gambling, right? They didn't want to worry about it. But I think that's part of the draft, is seeing that value and taking advantage of it. Also, if I were being extremely nitpicky, Hunter Norzad was a Penn State center who went to the Chiefs 2 picks after the Panthers took Shaw Smith-Wade.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have liked to see the center there. But we can get nitpicky on every call.
Yeah, you can get nitpicky on all this stuff.
That's a 5th round. Like if the biggest regret you have is like, oh, I wish you would have flipped some guys in the 5th round, you're doing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I wish you would have waited a little bit to draft that guy. I think you did pretty well. Also, they did get their picks back for the future. Dennis, I know you're big on this.
Very big on this.
Essentially, they've used Brian Burns to erase the collateral damage of the Bryce Young trade, meaning they used one of the seconds to get up into the 1st round, which they didn't have because of the Bryce Young trade, and they picked up a 2nd rounder next year, which they wouldn't have because of the Bryce Young trade. So there is an element of Dan Morgan on the phone, a la the movie Draft Day. I want my picks back. All of them.
Yeah, they had to do some work to get it done. But you got to think that when Dan Morgan was promoted to be general manager, the Panthers only had 5 draft picks, none of them in the 1st round, and did not have a 2nd round pick in 2025. And he walks out. Now, granted, he had to give up Brian Burns to make this happen, but you walk out with 7 picks, including a 1st rounder, and you got your 2025 2nd round pick coming in from part of the move down early in the 2nd round. So to me, the fact that he walked out with 7 picks this year and you got your 2nd round pick next year outside of players, well done. That's why I give the draft a B+ for the Panthers. I give it a B+ because of what he was able to do even before the draft. Because before the draft started, he only had 6. He stretched it and made it 7, and you got a pick next year. Job well done.
And the other thing is, this is what I talked about, like it was a lot of work to get back to neutral.
Mm-hmm.
They had 1 pick in the 1st, 1 pick in the 2nd, 1 pick in the 3rd, 1 pick in the 4th, 1 pick in the 5th, 6th, and 7th. They did a lot of moving up and down to end up where they kind of could have been generically, obviously different points in each of those rounds, but to end up kind of generically where the team starts before anyone starts messing with it. So I do give them credit for that. Now it's, you got to stick to your guns on the names you like and the reasoning behind taking them.